adaptation from SKT side.
Have to see, of course. Jay's now taken off the table, interestingly enough, not wanting to give that one over to Duke on the red side. So far, 2 solo laners taken away. Nidalee, of course, no surprise that it's going to be banned out there. Caitlyn as well.
Yep, the Caitlyn ban targeting UZI, definitely one of his best champions. A lot of people feel like Caitlyn's this kind of character champion that, like, the better you are, the more you can get out of it. It's not this binary, you know, most Rek'Sais play the same way. Caitlyn's really one of these champions that the better you are, the more you'll shine with it.
So I'm curious, do you think it's the same way for Ezreal as well?
For Ezreal, I think later in the game it's definitely like that, but earlier in the game I think he definitely struggles against picks like Caitlyn. It's also really support dependent how far you get in the lane with those champions as well, so I think both teams should actually put a higher priority on their support picks.
Interesting though, priority for RNG looks to be remaining in the jungle. mlxg is going to take his hands on that Olaf, but SKT really thinking about the Jhin pick now with Syndra taken off the table, Rise, taken off the table here. What do you think are going to be the go-to mid laners in this matchup?
I think Viktor will stay pretty high priority for SKT. They clearly were comfortable with the champion and were able to wave clear and stall out the game. The fact that the mid lane outer turret was up for like 35, 40 minutes was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just a strong pick that Korea always tends to favor, so I can see that being one. The Aurelion Soul, I'm surprised to not have seen any priority on yet. I don't think SKT likes it as much, but RNG played it to good effect, and it's really good at neutralizing enemy champions mid laners because you just basically are uninteractive and you run around the rest of the map.
Almost feels like RNG feel like they're probably getting baited into Aurelion Soul pick, like SKT have something up their sleeve to deal with it. So I guess they're not too sure about whether or not they have something like that, so they're just going to default to whatever is more comfortable for them for now.
Now really taking the time, of course, this is the bot lane focus stream, specifically UZI versus Bang. The Jhin has already been locked in. Now Ezreal is up and on the table. Do you think UZI just tries to play the other half of this matchup, or are we going to see a little bit more variance in terms of the AD carry pool?
I think personally it's going to be Caitlyn. I think this pairing is particularly good. Just getting... Oh, it's banned. Okay.
We talked
now.
I think Ezreal's likely. The big thing to me is Wolf gonna play Zyra, because
Zyra.
We saw what happened with Jhin Zyra versus Karma Ezreal, so they might shy away from it. Or I'm not 100% sure of the matchup, so maybe it is more Skilly and Uzi and Mata were able to just win. But it definitely didn't look that fun to play the Ezreal side of it.
Yeah, I think Ezreal just does not have that many tools to deal with something like Jhin and Zyra, and also just the pairing. I was talking about pairings before, like Jhin, Zyra, they have CC for each other, so they can just line up skill shots for each other, and they're like all combos just probably kill whoever is bottom lane, doesn't matter who it is. So I particularly like SKT's bot duo so far.
It is the same, of course, bot duo that RNG took last time around. It looks like RNG are going to play the other half of that matchup. The exact opposite swap here as we come out, but the interesting pick that I think we have to talk about, it's a bot lane focus stream, but Zach coming in for Blank. We thought this was kind of the North American special. It looks like SKT are trying their hand at it. What are your guys' thoughts on Zach?
Personally, I don't love it, especially given that we haven't seen a ton out of RNG. We don't know what their top is. We don't know what their bot is. If they take Ezreal, you have a pretty good escape against Zac in your Arcane Shift, and then the fact that you can probably, I don't know what they're going to take top, but if it's a tank, you don't really care about that. And then Viktor, I mean, you can get on him. He's probably the only thing you can really go on to, but if you just have one target as Zac, it's a little telegraphed. Yeah,
it seems to me that like when people play Zac in general, they generally tend to target the mid lane. It's just like the easiest one to gank for Zac. So maybe SKT are going to put a high focus on mid lane this game.
Yeah, for sure. In laning phase, it's pretty easy to go on there. In teamfight phase, though, I think it's going to be hard because you have the Poppy, who's great into it in terms of just press that W, stop his E from getting in. As you look an Arcane Shift away, Karma speed people away, Olaf can just ult, and then you basically have the Viktor to look at. And interestingly, xiohu's hovering Cleanse right now. I'm not sure.
I think he wants it into Varus.
Just for the Varus pick.
Yeah.
The last pick Varus I had not seen.
Varus, of course, Kennen, Zyra. There's a lot of potential CC coming in here from the SKT lineup, but only with a single tank. We have seen them run relatively tank-free compositions before, but I feel like we saw this jungle matchup in this exact same from the side of SKT and the exact same setup in the Cloud9 Samsung game where Meteos was trying to make the impact on Zac, but it just feels so difficult, as you mentioned, when you only have that one lane to gank. Now I'm curious, bot lane, as it is our center of attention, do we expect to see the junglers there at all, or is this going to just pretty much be kind of about the mid lane?
Personally, I think if anyone visits, it should be SKT's jungler. They really should have the advantage in this lane with the Jhin and Zyra.
Yep, if they're able to get a big push advantage, chunk them out, dives are pretty easy to pull off as Zac. On the same side, I mean, they are pretty immobile on the bot side of SKT, so if somehow RNG is winning that bot lane, an ulting Olaf can basically just run right through everything Zyra, and the Jhin can throw at him and just get on top of them, but it's harder. It's a lot harder to get in pre-6. It's almost impossible to gank pre-6. You just eat plants slowing you, you have a root, you have another root, you have traps. It's so hard for the Olaf to get over all of that into it before level 6.
And on top of just the CC, there is, of course, the insane amount of damage. But, of course, during the game, we're going to be taking your questions via Twitter using the hashtag AskTheCasters. Make sure to tweet us at LoL Esports. Let us know what's up. We'll answer some of those during the game. This is MarkZ. This is Gate. I've got some insight for you. They're happy to provide it. And I'm curious to see now, as we get into our game, exactly how the level 1 here has unfolded. Gate, we've talked about this before. You've talked a lot about the early levels. Who do you think has the edge here?
Okay, well, particularly for Zyra, she wants to stack her plants level 1 so she can do the camp like it's extremely fast. But like if I were RNG's duo, I would look to just like somehow invade their ground to stop that. So we'll have to. They're bringing mlxg down here, so I think that's their plan.
Well, what was interesting was when RNG had the Zyra last game, they tried to set up some plants in the lane, and SKT was aggressively trying to clear some of those plants away, and then RNG fell back and took the Gromp. So this time, it's a little different where RNG didn't contest the plants going down early in laning phase, and are instead maybe looking more to get onto the Gromp with that deep ward. But we'll have to see what they do. You see right now, Wolf already has 3 of those seeds set up for some plants.
Yeah, I think it's too late to go for the Gromp, so they're just gonna chill in the lane until the creep spawn, basically.
And so, I just feel so anxious watching them step towards the seed. Like, when is the Zyra Q gonna come out? And the plants are already, I mean, pretty much set up to take control. They're jumping on these seeds as soon as they know that the Zyra Q is down. But RNG look like they're much more poised than SKT were to take early lane control.
They're just asserting dominance right now. They're just walking in their face and stepping on the Zyra seeds, and they're just gonna get the first hits on the creeps here. So, and both bot duos know that, so they're just gonna end up like getting the faster push for RNG side.
Yeah, this is kind of how it played out last game as well, where SKT, when they were the Karma Ezreal, they just shoved the lane, took control of it, but once level 3 hit and they had access to all their spells, RNG, when they were the Zyra Jhin, were able to just push the lane in and have a lot of control. So it looks like the early levels of this matchup tend to favor the Karma Ezreal lane, and it gets harder from there.
Yeah, I also say like it's much better for RNG right now, before where they had the lane. Basically, Ezreal could stand on the side of the lane and then just use his skills. Or SKT are just scared of Ezreal's Q going towards them from the side of the lane because they have no good response to that. But now when it gets to level 2, they'll have more skills to deal with that.
Yeah, level 2 coming in here. Wolf, nice. Going in, does get down a decent amount of damage. This is almost identical to the early laning phase we saw. Of course, the matchups are switched if you're just joining us. Last game was SKT playing the Karma Ezreal, and they were the ones taking control here. But is this matchup pretty cookie cutter at a top level? Do you feel like this is always going to be how it goes?
Yeah, especially with how the level 1 went. There's not too much to say about the matchup because it'll just play out the same way.
Oh, Wolf goes over the wall, looking to get aggressive here. mlxg set to make it out, but Mata is in trouble. Faker's on the way down. In comes the snare. Mata getting body blocked for. Does have to flash to safety. Yeah. Heals coming out. SKT poised to take control. Mata running for his life, but the crit is too much.
Oh, that's a disaster because Jhin is one of those snowballing champions. He builds that flat armor pen. The fact that he's going to be able to get that build going earlier in a matchup that seems to favor him a little bit later on in the laning phase, it is a disaster for RNG.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly how that unfolded because looks like, you know, if you have the advantage on the lane, you should be able to get more numbers there. But the fight turned out so bad for RNG side.
I think.
So just as an update, we still will not have replays this game. We have loaned our replay observer to the mainstream as they are experiencing some technical difficulties. But to recap, essentially what we saw there was mlxg fighting over the Scuttle Crab, realizing he could not dual blank, and then trying to retreat, but Wolf aggressively flashed over the wall.
Right. I mean, when you play the Olaf into the Zac, you often feel like you should have the pressure early, but it's a little deceptive where Zac can actually scrap people a little bit better than is anticipated, I guess, and I think he just overextended thinking he could deal with it, and then also assuming because, like Gabe mentioned, that you had bot priority, you should have the numbers first. That aggressive flash over the wall help get the damage in.
It's good for someone like Wolf to realize that if he makes, like, even though they're losing at this moment in the lane phase, if he makes a play like that, they can easily just like swing the, not even the lane phase, but it seems like a big part of the game will be decided from that play alone.
taking a pretty decent lead to start things off. And of course, we saw how important early leads were in the last game. The question now becomes, if SKT continue to snowball, are RNG going to be the same sort of team that can keep the game going, that can deny that mid lane turret as we talked about? Because right now, Mata...
He's fearless. He knows for sure that Bang went home, so just like as a good tip, or just a rule of thumb, I guess, when you're playing bot lane, you just don't want both support and AD to back if possible, because the other guy can at least get some EXP or put the lane in a better spot for the AD. So that was what he was trying to do there.
Yeah, hold the lane, don't let it get completely into turret so you can farm safely while the other guys are recalling. It's really hard to make a play onto an Ezreal from this spot.
Yeah. Also, even if he took like everything Zyra could throw at him for like 5 seconds, he still wouldn't die. So he was confident in his HP, I guess.
So now Uzi's farming up. You can see the stats on the top of your screen. Uzi overall 2-1 over Corset. Bang only playing one game on Jhin, but it was a fantastic game. 17.0 KDA. Already on a pretty good start. Perfect KDA so far. Now looking at this matchup, you talk about Jhin having a decent lead. You can see Uzi with some pretty decent CS advantage. But looking at this as we move forward, you see the flash in mid lane. I want to know who wins this matchup moving forward, because it seems like we saw Bang outduel there in the final moments. When does Ezreal really start to pull it in? Or does he?
Maybe if you get some good poke on Zyra and she's too low to control the brush, but for the most part, when you pick something like Zyra, she just 2v1s the laning phase very easily. She just casts all her plants, and there's like they just fight for you. So there's like not too much risk there as well.
Especially with the recall timings the way they worked out. The fact that Jhin starts with an armor pen, or the serrated Dirk, giving him better trading, whereas Uzi as Ezreal just comes back with a tier. It gives you just a lot more combat summoners or combat stats, so it's easier to fight from the Jhin side in this kind of like middle early part of the laning phase.
Yeah, it's also much easier to poke. It's just like RNG. You'll notice like they should be taking enough poke at least later on in the laning phase that they won't really be able to, like, even with their jungler, do too much in the lane. So just like SKT pushing up the lane like this just gives them like little to no options.
Of course, SKT extending that gold lead about 1.5 thousand. You can see the CS very favorable for the top side of the map, but Duke potentially in trouble. mlxg can eat the stun there. Duke forced to burn all.
Ooh, missed.
I don't know if they're going to keep going for this.
Third.
Zach's on the way up. Zach's on the way up.
mlxg. Oh, I think. Oh,
nice. Ooh, nice.
mlxg really tiptoed that because he wasn't too sure of where the Zach was. Maybe if that was like the first axe hit or something like that, they could have done something else.
Uzi chained up. It's a lot of early damage. Bang taking the time to solo throw some damage down. Exhaust comes out. Wolf.
That was super aggressive, but at least he got a summoner for that. The exhaust is actually pretty important. So that aggressive E might look pretty silly, but there was no CC to follow up after that. I think MarkZ dead.
Mata's in trouble. Trying to get down. Heal does come out. Trying to flash to safety. Deathfire touch. Tizzy down. Not going to be enough.
Really close fight, actually. But you see the power of the double CC coming out from SKT's side. It's really hard to play against.
Yeah, I mean, what's so great about it, too, is just the plants off the E slow. And so as long as that lands, it gives the Jhin a very easy root follow-up because it'll also apply that mark allowing him to get the root.
Oh, that's the blue flash. I think he could a little more patient.
He's in a really weird spot where they know
he's
Faker's
on 1v1?
He couldn't run up there because Faker was on his way down through the jungle, so he was too scared to keep running to the top side.
Yeah, and he expended flash too from the Jhin ult, so not many choices.
All right, as we watch the Zyra pick, essentially pick up the pseudo solo kill there, this brings up a perfect Twitter question from LOL Armored Unicorn at Casey Badel. Is the Zyra pick good? It's not seeming that impactful as opposed to other potential support picks to complement their comp.
Are we watching the same game?
I think Zyra...
This question was probably asked before we just witnessed the Zyra solo kill people. So let's just talk about Zyra when she's not getting solo kills, just in general.
So like Gate was saying, you can basically 1v2 the lane with Zyra. You win almost every matchup, and it allows you to... in this pretty much guaranteed standard lane meta of competitive play, that's super important. It lets you free up for invades, you get your back timings when you want them, you can control the river. Like, there's a lot of things she does really well. Roaming, not one of them really. But when you run a poke comp, like the one that SKT runs, as Bang is starting to get engaged on Force to Flash.
This might be a kill for SKT.
In trouble. RNG. Ooh, pop goes Mata. This is going terribly for RNG. They don't even have priority anywhere else on the map, and suddenly mlxg is going down. SKT are turning it on. Blank flashes out from under the tower.
That was just a really... I mean, it's well played, honestly, by Bang. He knew exactly how he should get out of that situation and how to set up his support for just that CC, and they ended up turning 2 kills. Oh, and just touching on Zyra, I think it was actually pretty popular early on in the year, but she got some nerfs, and also just like 2v1s in general did not favor Zyra at all. So yeah, just with like the standard lane changes and people just kind of figuring out like, oh, maybe we can start playing Zyra again, she's going to see a lot more play.
Yep, and in terms of how it fits into a comp, it's obviously not as great at some things, like you know, Karma can speed up your engagers, an Alistar can just engage himself, things like that. But when you're playing this kind of more pokey, sit-back comp, Zyra is pretty good for it because you force the enemy team to run through it. Even if the Olaf is able to, you know, ultimate through your CC, that's still a ton of damage that the Zyra is going to drop down on him, and he's going to get through that at like half health.
Yeah.
With on top of the fact that the rest of the team has a hard time running through that stuff as well. So even if the Olaf gets in, the rest of the team, like a Poppy doesn't get through it that easily or something.
I think the best utility is damage, really. Just kill them before they can get to you. They can't do anything, right? So Zyra definitely brings that to the table for support, which is kind of rare, honestly, for support champions in general.
Yep, and there's always a couple like really minute utility things that you have to think about as well. The fact that she builds damage makes her a much bigger threat around objectives because she helps take them down faster. Things like Infernal Drake benefiting her more. Her plants being able to tank certain things like the Baron or Dragon, you know, let you take those easier. So there's a whole bunch of small, minute details as well that make her good in competitive play.
And also just touch on like utility too. Most competitive Zyras tend to max E like first because it goes from a 0.75 to a 1.75, and that's really like a big change in the CC duration. So she still brings CC. Like her combo will CC an enemy team for what seems like an eternity. So I think she does definitely like no speed ups, nothing like that, but everything else is pretty good for her kid.
Small 2v2 in the mid lane.
Now it seems like SKT are just firmly in the driver's seat at this point. What options are left for RNG, bot lane or otherwise?
It's pretty tough because Ezreal is definitely not one of those characters you want to fall behind on. His damage is not like he's just damage basically as a champion, and he has a ramp up time. So when you fall behind that ramp up time, it is a disaster. It's kind of like falling behind on a Caitlyn, except you don't even have like the traps or anything. You literally have damage.
Yeah, he just needs some time until you can at least get 2 core items. I think that's generally when Ezreal's kind of get out of control. Like they can at least do something on their own. So I think for RNG, they should just at least don't look at the bottom side of the map or try to play through their bot lane and then try to like make plays elsewhere.
And I mean, we're just seeing SKT 100% in control. RNG trying to make plays but consistently getting counter-engaged on. You can see the CS differentials in the favor, actually.
They're going to try to make
across the board.
I don't know. See how this is going to work out.
Knocked to the wall. Duke trying to get more. UZI just kiting backwards. Duke wants to get something. Knocked up. Shot. Trying to throw the shurikens out. Duke overextending and cut down by Looper there. Meanwhile, Faker is in the mid lane.
That's pretty crazy. I think he just needed some backup, and maybe if it was 2v3 or like just maybe 2v3 situation, the Kennen still could have done well. So that's just really aggressive.
Yeah, that was I didn't know quite what he was going for because both junglers are coming down through the river as well.
Yeah.
It's not a disaster though. It looks like it's just going to lead to a turret trade going even.
Still looks like it may favor SKT in the end.
Oh,
Blue buff going to Wolf.
Yeah, he's the carry here, so.
Yeah, I don't think that was the plan, but he's got 2 kills, 3 assists, whatever.
203. First core item completed.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is most Zyras tend to go for the damage build too. Like they go Liandry. There's no like locket or anything, so you'll have to like rely on your jungler to pick up like locket for your team. I actually saw Wolf build it in the previous Zyra game, but I'm not too sure if that's like the best choice. Generally, Zyras tend to go like Rylai's or Liandry's right after their supportive items. So I'm not too sure exactly what's better, like Rylai's or Liandry, but I know it's for sure not Locket.
Yeah.
So.
We'll have to see where he wants to go as we move forward in the game. But speaking of moving forward, as we approach the late game, Challenger Husk AD, I think that's how you pronounce your name, at Gigabyte Messiah, says, which team do you guys think will have a higher chance to win in the late game?
Assuming that everything was even going into the late game, I think I would have preferred RNG's comp, just because they have a lot more engage options. SKT is really basically a pick/poke comp, which is good too, and we saw that they can execute it in the group stage, but it is a lot harder to play. And RNG is pretty decisive. They'll flash in, they'll go crazy. So I would have liked their comp more, but if they're going to fall behind like this, it is really hard to play against SKT's comp, because once they get vision control, you have to walk into them, and then you eat a Jhin root, a Varus Q.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's like a definitive way to play RNG's comp. Like, you just use your Olaf and Poppy to run at their squishies. Like, what's the Zyra going to do to the Olaf, right, in the late game, or just when he gets some items? So, yeah, definitely agree with you. They're kind of way too behind at this moment in the game to actually say it's like easy for them to win the game.
One of the things I wish we would have had more time to talk about, because the laning phase obviously snowballed out of control, was just like positioning with where you send your carries, as Duke is collapsed on here.
Stun going in. Looper potentially in trouble here. Is stunned up. Does flash out. Gets the shield. Oh, that was so close.
I think he knew he was going to get the shield. He wasn't scared at all, honestly. But
I was scared. I was
you were
scared
for him. But yeah, I think for the most part, right now SKT they can hit every tower. They just took down the top one. UZI stuck there trying to clear. They're going to get some damage on the mid tower. It seems like there's not too many, like, they had to get that kill basically bottom. If they traded 1-for-1, like, what could have happened, that would have been a big disaster as well.
So SKT still remaining in the lead, 5K in their favor, but RNG are making some small moves to get back. How important is it to shut down the Kennen, especially when Bang and Wolf are already so far ahead?
I mean, I think the Kennen can just chill, honestly. There's not, like, his role in the game is just to get some creeps and then make it to team fight where he can just, like, contribute a little bit with his ult. So there's not too much he has to do this game. They should just, like, slowly play this one out, which I think SKT definitely have shown, like, they know how to do that.
Right, I think what you're saying is extremely on the... Oh, here's the TP flank coming in from the Kennen as we just start talking about him.
Maybe look for something. They have a lot of CC options. UZI, there's just nothing left for this guy. Far too many people here. Aggressive collapse coming in from SKT.
Oh, this is a brutal game to watch. Just to touch on what Gate was saying, your role in the team changes based off what your team comp and the other team comp is. So if RNG was playing the poke comp and you're the Kennen, your ability to get like big flanks and blow people up and lock them in place for the rest of your team to follow up on is like what your role is. Super, super important. Here, when he's playing on the side of the poke comp, his job is not to go in and flank nearly as much as it would be. He can just sit honestly in front of the poke characters and just press his ultimate in Zanya's and be extra zoning and utility for his team. The way he plays the pick will change based off what his comp is and what he's playing against.
Yeah, also this game just getting really out of control. Like, just because like SKT was so ahead, like they could give Kennen like such a good opportunity for that flank TP. And just, you know, you just got to play the game slow, let your team do most of the work. You don't have too much of an advantage by yourself, but like if you combine that with your team. They ended up giving the Herald buff to Bang, actually. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Not very common that we see the AD carries get it, and interestingly enough, UZI sacrificing some damage to go for the early Frozen Fist here. Very clear after that last engage that he may need a way to kite out this team. They're going to continue to go for picks. Now, looking into Jhin itemization, pretty sure that we're going for the Duskblade here, or do you expect the Maw Mount Mortius?
You definitely don't go Maw. There's not enough magic damage threat, really, and you're not at the point where you're like, oh man, that Viktor's going to blow me up.
Yeah.
He's not at that point yet in the game. So I think it's fine to go the Duskblade, go the more aggressive build. I mean, like, it's not like it's wrong to go Maw, because you'll pick it up at some point, but I don't think it's necessary, given that you're against so many physical damage threats and you're snowballing out of control.
Yeah, also if he were to let for the Maw, I think it would really slow down his build, because there's going to be two champions on the enemy team. They're going to stack a lot of armor, so I would expect something like after he finishes his Duskblade just to get the small component of Last Whisper, and then maybe he'll finish it, but then he has a lot of choices from there.
Just to touch on that thing I was trying to talk about a while ago in terms of positioning in the lane, like what side the AD carry stands on compared to the support. I wanted to point it out because, I mean, usually you have your Ezreal stand in the river side because he has the defensive escape and the arcane shift, and he wants to, like what Gate said, shoot past the creep, so he wants to be able to flank more as opposed to get pinned against the wall. And the Karma having no escapes and can fight for brush control more. It's one of those intricacies that, like, I think a lot of players don't think about that aren't quite at the competitive high elo level. That's super, super important to how you actually play the lane out.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that, because there's like a lot of matchups where it's literally just dependent on like how far you're standing from this guy, or if you're like parallel or perpendicular to this guy. So just like thinking like in your solo queue games, it's just important to, like, especially for support, I think it's especially important just to think about like what's the best way I could use my champion in the lane phase.
They have to see. Of course, we are now healthily out of the lane phase. Duskblade is, of course, on the way. I want to pick up one of our Twitter questions real quick. Tristan Simpson asks, why isn't there any Korean Lucian games in Worlds this year? Lucian, not a priority pick.
I think it's honestly pretty simple. It doesn't dominate the lane phase in a lot of matchups, and Lucian's really low range and only brings damage. So if you can get that damage out of an Ezreal who's safer, longer range, and isn't going to get bullied in the lane phase, then like why wouldn't you just take that? Or if you want to bully the lane phase, go Caitlyn. There's just better picks for doing what Lucian tended to do earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, it is true, like, if you think about the AD carry role, you generally associate it with damage, but really right now in like this meta, almost all the AD carries have something to do outside of damage. When you think about Lucian, he's just like the guy that goes in, does some damage, tries to kill someone with his dashes, and that's his contribution. But you think about something like a Jhin, he can CC people, he can start fights, he can like execute people, he has traps, like he literally has everything that you could ask, and then some. So there's like not a too good like of a way to explain it. I think just Lucian is actually
Pop is in a bad spot here. Nice flash on the root.
Exhausted though. Here comes Faker with the ghost. Drives, waiting for the disengage. Only going to hit the one. Zach on the way in. Looper looks pretty set to fall here. Rest of the team is up though.
Yeah, RNG's actually collapsing on this fight.
I think he's okay.
He's lived long enough that he might be able to turn this fight around.
mlxg's on Bang. Bang is all alone. Has to heal and flash to make it to safety. Not going to get outflanked. Now in trouble. I don't know if they quite have the strength to tower dive here, but a good turn.
Poppy is so tanky. He actually just tanked 4 people for about 10 seconds and then made it to his team, and they were able to turn it.
That's actually a really surprising thing out of RNG. Usually when you see a top laner pushing by himself and getting collapsed on, other teams will try and do something else like go up mid and trade. But RNG was aware of the fact that SKT couldn't actually kill him that easily, and they were able to collapse and turn it. It wasn't as explosive as they would have hoped. If they could have gotten a bunch of kills there, maybe they can even look at Baron, but the fact that they didn't lose anyone, looks like they're going to get the top turret off it, is pretty big.
Yeah, I think it's also good to point out that SKT have like this self-restraint too. They realize like, okay, this started out as a 1v4, we can try this, but they know how to like start pulling back once the situation's starting to get like a little too crazy for them. And then they know how like, even if they have gotten the kill in the 1v4, but then ended up in a bad situation, it does not benefit them at all. So they have some self-restraint when it comes to like plays like those.
Yeah, and it was just timed, fortunately enough for RNG, that Kennen's TP was still down during that, because the really scary thing is if you bait all of RNG up there to a team fight and then you get a flanking TP Kennen, so.
Yeah. As you talked about, maybe not his core goal this game, maybe looking for the more defensive ults to kind of keep the team safe. But if he ever does get that flank, still as terrifying as ever, has the Void Staff, has the Proto Belt, doing a decent amount of damage. Now RNG, you know, making some moves to get back. Still a 6K gold lead for SKT. But we have a question coming in for you, Mark, specifically regarding team composition. Ab, Hishek, Mickey Sana. I'm going to call you Mickey because you asked one question. If you ask another question, we're going to stick with Mickey. Mickey, ask Mark, why SKT picked Varus instead of Orianna? Ori-Zac duo is a nice combo to kind of attack that backline.
I think it's just how SKT prefers to play without knowing. They're going to go into mlxg, force his ult out. That's actually really big because they can maybe start looking to force around Baron again, just keep vision controlling it, and RNG will have to walk back up. But I think it's just what SKT has shown to prefer to play. They don't play like the super wombo-y teamfight comps, so they can. They prefer to play like really standard with everything that's kind of self-sufficient, like Viktor and things like that, or they want to play like the more pokey style. So I think it just comes down to a preference in picks, not wanting to play that Orianna and going for this style comp.
Oh, well, here comes the curtain call. mlxg looks set to fall here. Force shot not even going to be necessary as Faker's going to pick up the kill on that one. Baron, potentially the next objective for SKT. Now as we wait for that gate, your thoughts, Orianna versus Varus here on the SKT comp.
Oh, I think, yeah, I agree. Just SKT style just fits Varus better, but also you have to think about, like, I talk about pairings of champions a lot, but this trio of, like, Varus, Jhin, and Zyra, pretty undefeatable when it comes to, like, long-range damage. So I think they also had that in mind when they were trying to pick out their comp.
The core of the comp becomes totally different. You go from kiting back kind of comp into a dive comp where you put the ball on him, he goes in, you're womboing it with Kennen, as opposed to everyone just like kiting back and shooting stuff from afar. And SKT has shown that they're really good at playing that style. You saw how effective it was there. Force the ult out of Olaf, go back onto Baron, make him run back in again.
Oh no, Uzi not like this.
Get another pick, just keep picking them. I mean, that's how SKT likes to play.
Oh, Baron is back up. mlxg's back up, but they lose another member.
too low to force Baron again now. Just take the kills, shove out the waves, they're going to reset.
Of course. You see the, I don't know, teams like SKT, they have this resilience when it comes to like playing around vision. They're not just going to like let you take their vision. They're not going to just like, they're not going to let you just walk in when they have the control. You see it, how it all started out with they just popped mlxg's ult, and then they knew the next one was fatal, and then they kill mlxg and they chain it into like baiting the Baron. They know RNG have to come in again, so they literally just do the same thing over and over, but you have no response if you're RNG.
Seems like a really rough spot for RNG to be as SKT continue to take down these dragons. On average, taking 3 dragons a game before the series to the 1.5 from RNG, so you can see a lot more focus on the dragon control, of course, as you mentioned. Not going to take the risk on the Baron, and RNG finally get control back of that area. It seems like it may be too little too late as the gold lead continues to grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because they trade the Baron vision for that dragon, and that can be okay if you're willing to fight because now you have a couple TP wards or something. Maybe you can start a fight next time SKT tries to control vision around there, but they're so far behind that even a force like that feels super hard to win.
Yeah, I think it just came down to the early game. Honestly, there's just too much of a goal deficit. SKT can do a lot of like stupid plays and still get away with it, but it seems like they're just gonna stick to their normal setup. They're gonna group with all their poke and then gonna take vision, and then their next step is to just secure the Baron.
We talked earlier about how strong Ezreal would be on 2 items. He does have the Muramana as well as the Frozen Fist here, the Iceborne Gauntlet. Is UZI kind of one of the last hopes here for RNG if they are going to be able to pull ahead?
Yeah, he's going to be a big part of it. So what's interesting is a lot of the time Ezreal feels really oppressive to play against because you're shorter range than him and you can't quite space his Qs with like your own threat. But with Varus and Jhin, you have that ability a little bit. If you land a Varus Q into like a Jhin route, it's terrifying for Ezreal. So they have a couple tools that don't make Ezreal as oppressive as it can be, but still landing those mystic shots and the extra ability to kite out something like a Zac or the Kennen is pretty annoying.
Yeah, I think they're really depending on xiohu and UZI like getting a lot of damage off in all these fights, because right now it's like if they don't do that, there's no way they're going to run straight in and then be able to edge out a fight like that.
Luckily for them, it seems like there's at least a small edge on the top side for Looper. Decent CS continuing to pressure the Kennen in. Duke kind of playing on the back foot here, but it doesn't feel like the Poppy's ever really going to have kill pressure to play around. And SKT seem pretty content to just keep clearing out the waves. The gold lead holding at about 8,000. Now as we move forward, what really needs to be the priority from SKT? We see that RNG are behind, that they need to play back, that they need to clear waves. But SKT seems like they're just poised to take a Baron here.
Yep, I mean, that's basically what it is. The Kennen being pushed in bottom is not really a big issue. He's not a core part of your comp. You're basically 3 range pokey things with the Varus, Jhin, and Zyra with a frontliner and Zac, and you just vision control around Baron. And your Kennen's just kind of there as an extra like laning pick, probably more than anything.
Yeah, it's going to be a 4v4 around this Baron for like a long time because there's no... Oh, the Baron got a few hits on Wolf. That's actually really bad for him.
Yeah, it might force a recall out. We saw after that last Baron situation where they ended up getting Dragon off of it, SKT bought like 1 million pink wards and came back and controlled River, forced the Ezreal ult out, but that was able to make Baron angry at Zyra.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they were doing the right thing. It's actually pretty unfortunate that the Baron hit the Zyra a few times because I think they had pretty good control of the whole area. They're going to just have to go back and set it all over again.
And that's one of the things that I personally, SKT is really good at it, they can win, but it feels like a lot slower of a comp than some of the other ones where your margin for error is very slim as this kind of poke comp. If you ever mess up and somehow Looper gets behind you, he knocks like 2 or 3 of you up, and then Karma's speeding up a Viktor and an Olaf to chase down your carries, it is such a disaster because you're so immobile. And it's a very punishing comp to play if you ever do give that flank away, and that's why we've seen a couple other teams just fail horrendously with these kind of poke comps.
Yeah, and if I'm going to say about any team, like SKT definitely look like they're disciplined enough to just play like a slow game like the one we're seeing, and then closing out through just careful thought in how to move around the map.
So are we just never going to see SKT go for the Baron if it's not a perfect setup?
You'll see them go for it if they really just like someone went home too early or on a ward or something like that, but they won't rush things. They definitely like are the type of team to take it slow. They know even if it goes like, even though they have a lead, they just slowly push it into the late game. They're confident in their skills to win too.
So there's 2 things to talk about with why they wouldn't force Baron. One is like they're not great at it. they're okay, but they didn't get any like Mountain Drakes the way we saw RNG get last game, which let them just blow that Baron up. They don't have any of those tools, and when you start the Baron, it's really hard to be in a position to poke them as they come in. So if you start backing into the Baron pit to start fighting, you can't chunk them as they come through the chokes, as we see xiohu get rooted.
Curtain call. Mata, would you like to block? Oh, there it is. He wants to block.
That's like one of the fallacies in picking like a squishier support like Karma, or even worse like Zyra. Like they have Karma, which is not so bad, but when you have range support, you're generally like squishier. So someone has to tank Jhin ult, but there's like no good target to do it if your front line is not there. So like he wants to block, but at the same time he doesn't want to die either.
Yeah, if he takes 2 of those trying to block him, next thing you know, he's the next target, and Jin's aiming at him and saying, "Ah, forget the Viktor."
Oh, mlxg caught once again, has to use the ult.
It's like deja vu. We've seen this.
Yep. And that's
Rinse
what I was
and
talking
repeat.
about. They're not on the Baron because they want to hug this wall right here that you see Faker on. If you're on the Baron, you're not in a position to punish those kind of like face checks.
Yeah,
So-
and actually they can do damage to the Baron just like in this setup. RNG shouldn't even know whether they're just sitting there trying to poke them or hitting the Baron.
Yep, see the fog of war.
They should know by the plants now, but yeah, SKT just pull right off. There's no risk. There's no risk at all for them to do that.
Question mark things coming in on the bottom side. Looper continuing to apply pressure. He's winning the 1v1s, he's winning the trades, but it's just not translating into much of anything. A decent CS lead at this point, at least for himself, but he's getting a little too aggressive here under the tower.
I think the best case scenario is if Looper never has to use his TP and he's able to just stay down here and slowly chip away at Duke's tower.
Slow is is going to be the operating
One
word.
buckler at a time, boys.
Yeah, I mean, he can't dive the Kennen. The Kennen has too much damage and survivability with the Zanyas. He just pops his ult with CC Looper under the turret forever, so Looper has to go for these slow little throw
hit.
buckler at something.
Yeah, get the shield, hit it once, run away, do it again when the next wave comes. It's like 80 damage every time, so maybe on like the 20th wave he'll get the tower.
Hey man, you get that Iceborne Gauntlet proc in there too. You might get
true.
that thing up to 100 something.
Getting the decent damage down, but I want to hit a Twitter question coming in. Discount Sneaky asks, fantastic name by the way, how do you have a big impact on the game as Ezreal? I often struggle in the mid to late game.
Ooh, if you're struggling mid to late game to make an impact as Ezreal, you're not playing it aggressively enough, I think. It can be tempting to just sit really far back and shoot Qs, but you need to be able to walk into range and just play those ranges really well where you can hit them with their Qs, but you're not quite in danger of their engage, and you have to be good on the reaction time to arcane shift out.
Yeah, if you put people in a bad spot just by using your E aggressively and like baiting them basically, because you know if you hit more Qs you'll get your E again, like doing plays like those definitely make people like kind of panic and then not realize how much damage they're taking. So I think the #1 tip is just to not only focus on hitting your Q.
Yeah, that's a good point. You see a lot of like the top 80 carries, if they ever see someone out of position, they'll just shift on top of them, and Ezreal's kind of surprisingly tanky with the Iceborne Gauntlet build. If it's like a physical damage threat you're arcane shifting on, he can win a lot of duels like that.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, like you use your dash, you'll have to like burn your flash in a bad situation, but after like enough games you should be able to like gauge the situation well enough so that you won't have to like use your E aggressively but then also have to waste your flash getting out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's just clarify for all you like myself who may not be quite so mechanically gifted, be careful when you choose to E aggressively. From all the support mains out there, please do not just randomly leap into 4 people.
Nah, man, you gotta learn to fall.
Explore the world.
Fall to learn to run or something like that, whatever that quote is.
What is Ezreal's title? Like the Prodigal Explorer? You gotta be adventurous. Like, it's in his name.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make sure you have backup before you do it, that's that's your choice, and I'd recommend it. But you don't need it. You're Ezreal.
Depending on how much blame you want to take from your team, that's how aggressive you should be.
Yeah.
Well,
how thick is your skin? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this is some solid solo queue analysis there coming in. But speaking of backup, Takis Nikolopoulos, I apologize for that because that was definitely not how that's pronounced. Why did they stop picking Lulu, who can also buff your movement speed and similar to Karma, but also your auto attack?
Do you mean in the support position or
Yes,
mid?
support position.
Okay, in the support position, I think she's kind of outclassed by Karma. Karma really does all the things Lulu does, but the only case I would really see for Lulu support is with like a hyper 80k, like the old Kog'Maw before he got just changed recently back. Like things like Lulu that buff your attack speed and your on hit work better than Karma in that scenario, but in all the other scenarios, I think things like Karma will definitely do better.
So what does Karma offer that the Lulu doesn't that really makes that possible?
Like more consistency, basically.
Yeah, so like your laning phase will be better, and then in team situations, you can shield your whole team and speed them away. It's really easy to, I shouldn't say easy to play Karma, but like your thought process doesn't need to be too complicated. It's kind of just RE your team at the support position, and your items usually help with that in terms of, you know, often have an Ardent Sensor or something.
Yeah.
Baron now set to fall. I had TP's coming in from Looper. The Baron's going to drop. It looks like they are going to try to pick Duke. He goes pop, but RNG trade a kill for the Baron there.
It almost seems to me that Duke's TP, it seemed like a distraction. Like maybe he should have just canceled it at the last second, but that made enough time so they could secure the Baron, but Duke was not on the same page as everyone else, it seems like.
And that's one of the tricky parts about playing against SKT, because they'll do what we said about hugging those walls and poking you through chokes like so many times in a row. You get scared around them, and then finally once they decide like, nah, we're just gonna go for Baron this time. Yeah. And finally they're actually damaging it. And a big part too is the fact that Zyra is now on her items that make her really good against Baron with the Rylai's Leandries. Once she has those, she's such a threat around objectives.
Yeah, she could use the plants to tank, and then just, even if she needs the damage, she could just throw the ult on it. It gives it like attack speed as well and more damage. Actually, I think it just only gives it more damage now, but it makes it like Zyra can basically do 30 to like half the Baron's HP as a support, and that's pretty crazy if you think about it.
It's interesting that you bring that up, your point about kind of conditioning your opponent. This is something we see a lot in fighting games, something we don't see as much of League of Legends. Mark and I both avid fighting game players. But looking at this, how important do you think that kind of conditioning is? I know we hear a lot about it with skill shot champions. If they always walk left, you're going to start shooting the skill shots left. Do you think that it is something that comes up a lot in competitive League of Legends? Are those instances of, you know, kind of conditioning your opponent to get used to you playing one specific way?
I think it doesn't happen as much as you would necessarily think. It's a lot more internal than it is like thinking consciously about it, where like as you lane against someone a couple times over the course of like the 10 minutes of the laning phase, you'll start picking up on how they're playing. Sometimes it even changes game to game. But these big team situations, I think it is a lot more conscious, where if you start Baron the first time at 25 minutes when you're not as tanky, you don't have as much damage, and RNG just collapses on you and murders you at Baron, that's a disaster. So the fact that SKT spends so much time around Baron, and they almost never actually threatened it during that whole 35 minutes until finally they went for it that one time, is huge, because RNG it's so hard to be as vigilant and careful over the course of that time, where finally you slip up once and the SKT's actually on the Baron.
Yeah, I think it's definitely exactly how SKT like to play too. It's like a mind game almost, you know, you're not exactly sure, but that's the most dangerous part, because if you're not exactly sure, they could either just, it could be dead or they could just be baiting you. So yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. Just SKT in general, like it's hard to fool them.
Definitely. We'll take a bit of damage there. One thing RNG know for sure now with the Baron up, SKT pushing down, is that they're going to need to defend this inhibitor line. Blank sort of waiting in the darkness, ready to leap into the team at a moment's notice. We're still talking about it. RNG still behind, now 10K behind, unfortunately for them. 4 Dragons backing up SKT, but luckily for RNG, they are only Cloud and Ocean Drakes. That said, what are we waiting for on the side of RNG? What is their ticket out of this?
Poppy TP flank. Oh, her TP's down, but she's looking for a flank anyways right now. It's going to be super hard because SKT has such good wards. So RNG want to wave clear until Poppy's TP flank is up, though she is behind now.
Snared, uses the W, trying to block it out. Looper is taking so much damage, disengage potential from Wolf, flashes forward. Looper now set to fall. Ult from Kennen onto so many members. Duke doing his best Smeb impression there, and in goes Blank. Bounce House comes out, is going to have to walk away, and SKT take control in that exchange.
I mean, that's what we're talking about from this poke comp playing from ahead. If they're behind, Poppy's tanking up to just run through some of that stuff, get some CC, and the rest of the team joins in. But from behind, just gets chunked out before you're able to make an impact.
Yeah, also, really, if you think about it, SKT have been playing the same game for 38 minutes, like the exact same. They only just now have a Baron. Like, that's like, oh, feels good. Like, I have a Baron too. So they're just going to take bot like that. Nothing really changed. They were watching out for Poppy the entire game. They just caught him there with, like, you saw Zyra's damage there too. She did so much work in that fight. Her roots like made it so Poppy couldn't get any angle on the carries, and then her ult zoned all of RNG's carries. So really, you're seeing like the Zyra pick do so much work for this team right now.
Unfortunately, the Miracle Steal just doesn't really feel like it's possible for the side of RNG. Olaf, of course, his natural enemy is the wall. He's got no way to make it over there. He's got no way to surprise and steal from the backside of the pit. So it feels like SKT are now set to take this Elder Dragon. I mean, is this just the SKT win? Objectively.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty dominating performance by SKT. Started off by the fact that they had such a snowball going around the bot side of the map. When you have a tank top and the Viktor middle, if your bot side gets crushed like that, you don't have a ton of playmaking options elsewhere. I mean, the Poppy can kind of gank for it, but it's not like getting a Poppy an extra kill is like a massive deal. It's not going to take over the game.
Yeah, that's also one of the problems with playing just a tank top. Like, maybe if that was a Jace or something, he'd like push a lot of like split push advantages. But since it is just a Poppy, like you saw, like Duke just, even though he was like playing on the defensive side the whole game, he never really struggled to hold the Poppy on 1v1 under his turret. So it wasn't like a huge issue for him.
Oh, Looper is getting caught out in the jungle now.
Oh, someone knocked out of the fight there. It's Wolf, but unfortunately Looper, ooh, now going to dash the creeps. Nice display there. Still gets snared.
Still
oh no.
Rooted. Maybe he'll die to the Zach.
No, Zach's not going to overextend. This is SKT. Yeah. Gate, come on.
Too controlled.
There's a turret top. Just to touch on the tank versus like carry thing a little bit more, getting a kill on the tank early can be really good because it pushes them to like their first resist item versus that character, and it really stops them from snowballing. So that's good, but it's not like the tank's gonna actually carry the game if your damage dealers are super behind, which
maybe,
is what happens.
Maybe if you build like a Triforce this game as Poppy, maybe.
Yeah,
sure,
and the ult boosted your damage and made you immune to everything. Like
yeah, that'd be good.
good old Poppy.
Yeah. The good old days. God, that
changed.
champion was disgusting.
Yeah.
Thank God. New Poppy's also pretty powerful, but just definitely not in this situation. Now, Gate earlier you mentioned, actually, we'll just keep an eye on this, because in goes blank. RNG now seems set to fall.
Zoning E, just jump at their carries, make them run away, and while your team hits the turret. It's so methodical from SKT.
Yeah,
so earlier you said Gate, I want to interrupt you just quickly here. You said that it all came down to those first 2 kills on the bottom side of the map. That one mistake, that one aggressive move coming in for Wolf. Do you think that that still plays true? If that had not happened, do you think RNG may have been able to keep this a more even game?
At least there's way more options in how to play the game. I said it before, like SKT after that, they played the same game for the entirety of the game. And it wouldn't change if they were just like playing the same formula, because if you're behind as RNG and you cannot run at them, which was like your only way of like doing anything in this game, you just do not have like a way to control this game and how it plays out. So the first few kills are very disastrous in my opinion.
All right, well, with a 15K gold lead, it feels like a great time to get on a Twitter question. And this one, while it may not be relevant to this game, I personally like it. Cora/Strobe/Seppi at Castle_Wars says, why does no one play Vayne? Why no Vayne, boys?
I guess I like kind of explained it earlier too. She just has damage. Like, you have to kind of put her 1v1 against other people too as an AD carry, and she's not gonna like take TP or anything. See, the Zac just kills the Viktor by himself.
No assist even, just straight up soloed him.
Yeah, that guy's a monster now.
Continue. This appears to be par for the course for this game. We'll just watch people die as we talk about it. So Vayne, just damage, just dueling potential, doesn't feel like a team player.
To be honest, her lane phase is not even that good for like a 1v1 champion. Like, you can't really edge out too many advantages against like Caitlyn or like Jhin, any of the popular champions right now. So if she could, honestly, like edge out good advantages.
Got him flank.
Looper
going
finally
in.
got
They're trying to get him.
It's a little too late. You see, Bang doesn't even care he's getting ulted.
And the Zyra just controlled him again.
Yeah.
Zyra just shoots a root at him, and he can't run. Even if the root misses, he can't run through the plant.
Yeah,
so it's so hard to get onto Bang. And that's going to be game.
Decent poke coming in. The flying corpse of Zac leaps through the air. And
hit him with the icon.
The SKT BM comes out. It's going to be game 2 going over in the favor of SKT. If I don't sound excited, it's because we watched that long, slow demise of RNG. 20K gold lead closing out the clean SKT fashion. And one final very well executed fight to deny that Looper flank. But this is the SKT I think we were expecting right off the bat, and I'm curious what you guys think has to change coming to the next game on the side of RNG.
I think their plan was fine, but you can't fail your plan so hard. And the thing about SKT is they play such a grindy style. It favors them so heavily in best of 5 because, like, yeah, you lost this game and against like a more explosive team, like, all right, you got blown up, whatever, let's reset. But you got ground out for 43 minutes after a single misplay at like 5 minutes into the game, and you just kind of had to take it for that extended period of time. It's not necessarily demoralizing, but it's tiring. It's something you don't want to have to deal with over and over, and the fact that you might have to put up with it for two more losses is so difficult. So I think RNG need to find a way to energize themselves after that kind of sapping performance and find something that's going to work for them.
Yeah, I think the best way to do that is just like pick an aggressive support, aggressive jungle, and just like run around the map, try to kill people. Like they're really good at doing that. Like we've seen them do that. So I'm pretty sure they just change up their style. Maybe just a few picks. To be honest, I think SKT just went into this game. They thought they wanted to play it slow. They ended up playing it slow. They're like really happy they were gifted the advantage early. So they just took it step by step.
And it's truly unfortunate the way the game unfolded is that they were gifted an early advantage. It does, once again, feel like it all comes back to that 5 minutes, to watching this slow grind. Now, we have seen this exact same bottom lane twice now. Do you think this is going to remain the bottom lane that we're going to see? What is the potential change up here, assuming picks like Caitlyn are still banned out?
I think you need to look at the Zyra. I mean, it's so strong in its laning phase, and it basically wins every matchup. I don't think it needs to be banned, but you have to look at it as either an early pick or just coming up with a new way of playing against it.
Yeah, I think just not even speaking about laning phase, like compositionally, it seems like it was so good to round out whatever they had. So honestly, they just have to think about the pick itself a little more, like maybe find a better answer to it too, honestly. But yeah, that champion, it did so much in this game.
So much in the last game as well. Truly a power pick rising in this series. But next on the Player Extreme, we're going to step away from the bottom lane and head right into the mid lane and get some expert insight from Alex each. In the mid time, we'll also send you over to the mainstream, where the analyst desk is going over the SKT, trying to explain exactly